Alice. Thank you for joining me.
Hi, thank you so much for inviting me.
So, where in the world are you right now? Because I assumed you lived in France, but then I read in one of your at some point I read that you were in Melbourne. So, where are you? Where are you?
French person. So yeah, I live in Bordeaux.
Oh, okay. For some reason, I must have thought that that was when you received your diagnosis, and I was like, but it was just one of the things on your resume that
Yeah, it's
one of the
okay.
many jobs we tend to have, right? Okay. Oh, awesome. All right. Well, this is exciting because I feel like I have a lot of questions about the French attitude toward ADHD,
Mm,
and but so let's hear about. I would love to hear about how you were diagnosed because you were diagnosed in 2020, correct?
yeah.
Yeah. And so, what was going on in your life that you started to put two and two together and think, okay, maybe what I'm experiencing is ADHD?
Yeah, well, the thing is, I think I like to describe it as an adulting burnout. I was just struggling so much. I would say from 20 to 29, difficulties in life just keep getting stronger and harder, and more responsibilities and paying bills and everything. Yeah, everything just got a bit too much to handle at some point. And I am a pandemic diagnosis like you, I assume. And yeah, so I think something really, it was just too much. I would say just, yeah, it's just too many struggles, and I just couldn't really, yeah, cope really. And I needed an answer. It was like this needs, this visceral needs of getting some answers about, just some insight on the thing I was going through. And also I had a professional project that was kind of failing, and I was really struggling with self-esteem because of that. And I just, yeah, I needed something to just to not completely lose my mind. So I after a long months of hesitation and doubt and wondering if I were really legitimate to ask for an assessment, I finally, yeah, had the courage to make an appointment. And it was a big thing. And then I waited for a moment, and yeah, got my diagnosis at 29.
Did you see a psychiatrist?
At this time, I was seeing someone, I was seeing a psychiatrist, because, yeah, I went through difficult times in my life a few years before, a lot of grief from, yeah, I lost important people in my life. But at the same time, yeah, I was describing to him my ADHD symptom quite clearly when I think about it now, like listing everything. And I was like, "Oh, I don't know, I'm struggling so much with this thing and this thing and this thing. I don't know why, what's wrong with me." And the thing is, in France, we have a different approach on mental health, and a lot of psychiatrists really like to analyze your life and your past, and which is very important. But some of them, and a lot of them, and especially older psychiatrists, are quite reluctant to make diagnosis, and they try to make you work through everything. But sometimes you really need to have a diagnosis. So this is not the person that diagnosed me, because, yeah, he should have seen that it was ADHD. I mean, I was describing it for years with him, but so I asked an assessment with another one, someone who was younger and a bit more in tune with modern psychiatry. And but I was diagnosed then a few months later or so by a specialist. So I have two diagnoses. So, yeah. Just wanted to be sure.
Right? I know. I always say I wish I had a card that I could keep in my wallet to remind me that I was actually diagnosed by a professional, because there's so much of that self-doubt.
Yeah.
And, I think so many of us had that experience in the past
Mm.
where we were told that we were just depressed, right? Or that we needed a good nap. Or, like you said, like, let me start thinking about all the reasons why,
Yeah.
that it could be something else. And we don't think of ourselves as hyperactive. I didn't think I had an attention issue. I don't even really know what that means.
Yeah.
uh,
Who knows?
Right? And so oftentimes we come with this long list of what is clearly, like you said, clearly ADHD symptoms, but
Mm.
nobody in the room knows that that's what that is.
Yeah.
And so luckily, it always feels like there's this one fatalistic moment where somebody recognizes it, or some article or something, like a light switch goes off, where you're like, oh, that's what ADHD looks like.
Yeah. Yeah, and especially in France, we don't really have this. It's not really something we grew up with, especially for people my age, because ADHD wasn't really something we knew about when we were kids, and so I didn't even know it existed before a few years or months before my diagnosis, and it was only because I was super interested in psychology in general, and I was consuming content in English, and yeah, I was able to, cross paths with ADHD a few times, and the first times I think I was really, really, I was, yeah, never imagined I could have that, but with time and seeing more and more women also speaking about their experience on YouTube, for example, I started to relate more and more, and yeah, it started like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, France certainly has a reputation of not diagnosing ADHD, right? Or at least being resistant, or like you said,
Mm.
just that there is a communication breakdown in some of the older practitioners versus this younger generation. But I often wonder if it was more of, it's just culturally more amenable to neurodivergence, right? So it wasn't like there would have been a time in which it's just, you would struggle less because it's a much more open environment, or a much more open, socially just more accepting of neurodivergent personalities. And it's like, as we have kind of progressed into a more modern Western society, those
Mm.
of us who struggle in 9 to 5 jobs or independent projects, or a lot of the things that we find are creating this implosion of, like, that we're really struggling with, a lot of those things weren't necessarily, those are products of modern capitalist society. Whereas I feel like France was always known as this wonderful, laid back, walk everywhere kind of place. It just, in terms of, like, it's so different from the US in so many of the ways that felt like it would be more accommodating to a neurodivergent brain.
Yeah, I don't know really. I don't have the experience of living in the US, so I couldn't compare. But yeah, I don't know. I see, because I also have an Instagram account in French, and so I have, the feedback from my mostly US community and my mostly French community, and I see a lot of people, and especially a lot of women, are really struggling with late diagnosis journeys, and yeah, so I think it's different, but I think it's not really that much accommodating, and especially we also have here kind of really bad view on ADHD, because for many people, especially maybe my parents' generation, it's really this big American thing that's, big American corporation want to sell drugs to our kids, and so there is this, and it's kind of difficult to go past that sometimes. So there is a big, many French people are a bit reluctant to admit that ADHD could be something real and just not just linked to big pharmaceutical American corporation. And yeah, it's a bit weird.
Yeah.
We are a weird country.
Well, I think here too, there is certainly a, a lot of people who feel like it's made up or that it's an excuse, right? Like that this is really just you're just, compensating for the fact that you're lazy or that you don't want to do it, all of those things. So it certainly exists here. But yeah, it's always, I'm sorry, I'm like still thinking about how fascinating it must be to be able to compare in two different languages the struggles and how they're existing for the two different audiences. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I have the same post, for example, about the same, issues, and the audience don't really respond on this in the same way. So it's kind of really interesting. And my book is coming out in French next week, so it's very exciting too.
Okay, so let's talk about the Mini ADHD Coach because obviously I follow you and have for a while. So I'm like, did you have any kind of platform before you started that account? What, like, talk me through the timeline of this account that has just blown up. You were just like at home in 2020, like many of us, and
Yeah, basically. Actually, this is Instagram account. Yeah, I created it a few years before I created the Mini ADHD Coach. It was actually my account for everything a bit artsy, all the artistic project I had, and so it was an account I activated and get back to like every 6 months, just cycling through my artistic experiments, and so yeah, I had I think 1,000 followers on it, and it was just basically me just crafting and sharing with crafty friends on Instagram. It was a great community, by the way, and so just right after my diagnosis, I felt super relieved, but a few days later, I started to feel really down, and maybe it was because we were all at home also, and it was a pandemic, and I was going out of this professional project that was completely failing, and it was, a difficult moment, and I just needed to connect. I felt so lonely, so I needed to connect, and I decided, okay, let's just doodle something. I'm always doodling anyways, so. And I just posted the first doodle saying, I have ADHD and it's okay, with a little bubble. And I was so not convinced of this at the moment I posted it. I think I was thinking just the opposite of that. I was not okay at all. But I just needed to start a conversation, and actually it worked because in my artistic community, a few person were actually just diagnosed or diagnosed earlier, and yeah, we started just exchanging about that, and people started saying, oh, you have ADHD? I have ADHD too, I was diagnosed 2 years ago. And then so yeah, I just kept posting doodles because I had nothing better to do at this moment, and yeah, things blew up at this moment, and it was a wild ride, and it was 3 years ago now, and it's just amazing the community that we have now, and people are just so kind and so warm, and I don't know, it's just amazing.
Um, it is, right. And I think also this idea that there's that adage, like if you want to learn something, you should teach it, right? Because that is like, it's like your ADHD brain at work as you're
Yeah.
learning all this stuff about ADHD and then turning it around into instruction, making something out of it in terms of an instructional. and I started this podcast too because I started the podcast before I was even officially diagnosed, and I
Mm,
was very nervous that I was going to find out that I didn't have ADHD.
yeah,
And right, but then
like
also
most
being
of us.
like, right, but I was like, oh no, but the whole starting the podcast about ADHD part is pretty clearly you have it.
Yeah.
Right, so you think about like these side projects that suddenly become this enormous, like all-encompassing part of our lives.
Mm.
So it's like you're doing the video, like it's not just doodles anymore. This has been
Yeah.
incredible what you've been working. Are you doing this on your own? What did you bring in a team? I'm like, it's dizzying to think about all you've all you've been
Yeah, it
doing.
is. We have a team now. It's amazing that we were able to, yeah, bring more people in the team, and just a lot of neurodivergent people. Just, yeah, a lot of people with ADHD. We have a lot of people, yeah, just participating, animators and illustrators for the videos. Of course, I cannot do everything myself, and yeah, I tried, and, and just at first I tried, and I decided I will learn to animate stuff, and just, yeah, it will be okay. And no, it's not possible anymore, and I also know myself better now, so I try to not jump into things so much, and try to, yeah, it's also really great to be able to work with talented people, and just let them do the thing that you want to do sometimes, because yeah, you don't have to quit what you're starting a few days later when you just don't start. So yeah, it's nice, and yeah, it's just incredible. And what is really important for me is to make the content in different languages, and that's something I'm really invested in. And so we have the Instagram account in other languages: Spanish, Portuguese, French, and we are working on the website and YouTube. So we just, yeah. So I hope that everybody can just know at least that ADHD is a bit different from what we think it is, and I think it's important to, yeah, create content in other languages. So just because the English community is already so rich, but in some countries, it's they are still a few years behind on the awareness, and so, yeah, I'm just thinking about all the people that are still at this point where I was a few years ago, and just want to help them understand that they are not alone.
Mm, right, and I think also being able to articulate what this looks like in very small like vignettes of our life, I think is what is so important, and why I think like TikTok has been so instrumental to ADHD diagnosis, is
Mm,
because it's one thing to just read a book or to see in the DSM, but it's another thing entirely to see, just this one example of like, oh, this is what it looks like. And here, oh, I do that. Wait, everybody doesn't do that. Wait, this is part of ADHD. Like going through
yeah,
all of that. Like, oh,
exactly.
wow. Okay. But I'm sure, like, as an illustrator, have you thought about what it is about illustration or the medium that seems to really resonate with so many of us?
I don't know. I think that's, in a way, having these doodles can make the experience I try to um, explain and shows a bit universal, and I think it's easier for people to relate to a doodle that is just funny and really, minimalistic in a way, than to someone, because, yeah, it's everybody can see it themselves in the drawings. And I was quite surprised how many men were actually sending me messages on Instagram and saying, "Oh, I relate so much with what you are doing." And they are often already diagnosed, but oftentimes they just really don't know what is ADHD is, so they are still super happy to find content about it. But yeah, so I was super surprised because I'm drawing like a girl with pink hair and like 50 something or 40 something adult men with kids and all are coming in my DMs saying, oh, thank you so much for what you're doing. It's just, I just relate so much to your content. And I'm like, okay. So I think, yeah, the drawings just give it, yeah, a really universal sense that, yeah, people can relate to. And I guess, I don't really know, but.
Well, I think the character too, like you said, like there's just a sense of like it's gonna be okay. Like she's very reassuring, and I think just like one of the things I have realized with the ADHD, especially when it comes to a lot of the things we struggle with in terms of executive functioning is like really a lot of the time all we need is the acknowledgement and the validation that this is not a character flaw, that this is not something reason that you're terrible. Like sometimes all we need is just a sweet little pink-haired girl to say, to say it's fine, it's totally fine, this happens to everybody and we're gonna get through this. And I think that character is, I think why that character is so appealing is she really encompasses that, like,
Yeah,
that
she's, yeah, I
like
think,
positive regard.
exactly. She's really a shame fighter, I think. And really, I think shame is a big, it's an ADHD killer in a way, an ADHD killer, because it's really the thing that we all struggle with. And it's so deeply in us, it's so, yeah, there's a lot of suffering. When I see the messages and the comments on my contents, I mean, I try to make things a bit light, but at the same time, in the end, yeah, we need to address the suffering that people with ADHD are experiencing because it's not, yeah, it's really something extremely important, and there is this shame that almost all of us are living with. And in the end, I think I really want to just ease people's pain with my drawings. And that's why I try to make them so, yeah, light-hearted and warm, I guess.
Hmm.
Because I know the shame, I know the pain, I know everything that is behind our quirky attitudes, but yeah, it's deep.
I know. Yeah, exactly. Right. And it's not anything that's in the diagnostic criteria, right? I feel like I talk about that on the podcast too, like how so many of us relate to the emotional elements of ADHD when we're getting our diagnosis in adulthood, right? It
Yeah,
is all of the deeply held shame around some of these things that, struggles that we believe are character flaws.
yeah,
And it's unpacking all of that. And it's not, that's not how it's presented. It's like not often those aren't the questions that are asked of us in clinicians' offices. And it's
yeah.
sort of like so much of the treatment plan with ADHD
Mm,
is working on dismantling that shame. And how do we do that? It's not
yeah,
just like, here's your pill, see you later, go, pills help a lot. But
yeah,
I think there's just so much more there in terms of our mindset and our self
yeah.
concept and how we regard our who we are in the world too.
Mm,
It's deep, right? And I think also, like you were saying, like when you are diagnosed, there's that moment of like, oh my goodness, this explains everything. But then it's followed by that grief, right? Of that weight of looking back over the course of your whole life and thinking, like, oh, I really struggled.
yeah,
Like, I really struggled. The signs were there all along. What is the life I could have lived? Like, all of those questions that come with an adult diagnosis.
yeah.
Now, so first, before you created the Mini ADHD Coach book that is coming out in the US already?
Yesterday.
Is it? Yay! Okay, exciting. The congratulations.
Thank you.
But originally there was a workbook, right?
Yeah, so it's different, it's completely different tools. The workbook, I really created it because This moment right before my diagnosis, I don't even like to think about it again. It's just the doubt. You know, I often say that I was waking up convinced I had ADHD. I was like, of course I have ADHD. What, you know, it's just it's so obvious. And by the time I was getting to bed at night, I was just I was no, of course I don't have ADHD. I'm just lazy. I just need to, you know, it's obvious that I don't have it. You know, I had good grades in school. I am no, it's not me, and just experiencing this cycle every day for a few months before I had my assessment, and then the result of the assessment with my diagnosis, it was it was so painful. It was really difficult, and I felt so lonely, and I consumed so much content, and sometimes something I read or I watched on YouTube was really validating. And I felt relief because I felt like I related and I felt I was legitimate to ask for an assessment. And sometimes, you know, you come across an article and it doesn't fit your experience, and you're like, who am I kidding? Why do I want to waste time of a psychiatrist just because I think I may have ADHD because I cannot pay my bills on time like a proper adult? And you know, it's just, and in this experience it was so frustrating and so painful that I really wanted to create something that people could use during this time just so they don't feel alone. And also because you know, I read many times the diagnosis criteria and the description of the different symptoms, and you know, the materials they gave you when you do the assessment. And it's, you know, the description of the symptoms, they are just weird. They're just really weird, and they're just not logical. And you know, I just wanted to create something that people could use at this specific time where they are waiting for their assessment and they are wondering if they could have ADHD, and just feeling less lonely, feeling, you know, they can evaluate how the symptom can affect their life, and write down, you know, the different memories and everything, you know, the thing that most of us do in a notepad and then on our phones, and it's all just super messy. And then, you know, the day before your assessment, you're panicking and you're thinking, oh, maybe I will just forget everything, and I won't be able to answer the question, and so I won't be diagnosed. And, you know, it's just so stressful this moment. So I just wanted to create this workbook to help people, yeah, during these specific moments, pre-diagnosis. So the workbook is really about that, and it seems that, yeah, it's working well because it's actually even recommended by some psychiatrists who are really happy to see their patient coming in with this tool, because they see that, you know, they are organized a bit at least, and more confident, just a bit more peaceful. And yeah, so there is this. I made it like 2 years ago, and now there is a book which is completely different, just made for everybody really, because I think people who are diagnosed, who are not diagnosed, who already told them what ADHD is and how it impacts our life, and also for people who are living with people with ADHD, for teachers who have kids with ADHD, you know. So I think this is really a book for everyone.
That's right. I think that's fantastic. It reminds me of how important it feels to us to have like that at our fingertips, those reminders, because it reminds me of when I got my bartending license when I was in my early 20s, and I was always really frustrated about the fact that I couldn't remember the ingredients to bartending drinks. Like there was like 4 or 5 I could remember that I did a lot, but I could not for the life of me remember because I just couldn't. And so I always had to keep the bartender's Bible with me, and like and I was always felt like I was a terrible, you know, that there was something I was doing wrong long because I couldn't hold all of this information in my head. But I feel like that with a lot of the stuff when it comes to just these little tips and tricks that work, right? Like we always are feeling like it's out there somewhere. I just don't remember, like you were saying, like there's some papers everywhere and disorganized. Like I just want things to feel organized, and I just want
Yeah.
that feeling of having everything together that I can reference at all times. I feel like it speaks to that. But so how were you able to write a book with ADHD? I think is the big question.
Yeah. It's a question I ask myself too. And also, the thing that yeah, most people don't know is actually I gave birth like 2 months before the date I had to give my manuscript to my publisher. So it was intense. It was really intense, and I actually don't know. I think I just the thing is, I think I learned so much about ADHD while I was, creating posts, and I was so immersed in everything, and I binge consume all the content, I could for so many months before starting to write the book, that once I decided what the book would look like, how it would be structured, I think yeah, everything kind of really fell in place because I knew everything I had to say, in the book. So I think this is, yeah, I really wrote it as someone with ADHD, and I think it is that, you have to be confident on the fact that you have more knowledge that you think you have some time on things because you just casually consume so many contents and so much content, and so we really sometimes really do have a lot of knowledge in some stuff, and so when you have to make something out of it, I think if you have the good, the right approach, it can be less hard than you think. It's still hard, but it's really intimidating. But at the same time, if you manage to do it the right way, it's doable. And I think also because it was super important for me, like to have super short paragraphs, really things like that were really easy to read for the readers. But at the same time, I think it was also for me because it's easier to write very short paragraph about something and then jumping to another thing. So really, I really just needed to go through every single item I had to write. But yeah, I think I managed to do it in a really ADHD way, and yeah, it worked. I don't know if I could do it again, but yeah,
All
I made
right,
it.
so first get pregnant. That's the
Yeah.
first thing we do. Do you think your pregnancy helped as baby? Some of, at least having the deadline or knowing that you wanted to get it done, or I'm just even like hormonally. Sometimes we talk about like when we're pregnant with ADHD, there's that feeling of like everything feels like so clear, right? Because we have so much estrogen in our bodies.
Yeah, I felt really good during my pregnancy, and I think it helped maybe. And yeah, but yeah, it was kind of difficult. Yeah, it was, the thing is, I really wrote the book right before and right after I gave birth. So it was, yeah, it was an experiment. But yeah, it was really, those memories I will never forget. And for my daughter, it's incredible that I will be able to tell her that, yeah, she was still in me while I was preparing the book, and you know now she's one, and yeah,
Oh,
it's a nice story. But yeah,
right.
I cried a few times. It was really stressful. Yeah, but it's
Uh,
done.
well,
So yeah,
congratulations on both of your births.
yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. So in terms of like website and the resource and everything, I guess I'm like, how do you keep it interesting for yourself?
It's not easy to, yeah, it's not easy, but I work with no, it's definitely not easy, but because I have so many ideas of things I want to create, and I want to make so many new things, and it's just I have to stay calm and just try to, yeah, just tame my enthusiasm a bit and see things a bit long term, and yeah, but I work with other people, and I think you need to find people that are not like you, and that are able to, yeah, do things that are difficult for you. But for example, for the website, I work with a writer. She also has ADHD, but she likes to write, so she's writing a lot of our articles, and she's really really good at it. But yeah, I couldn't do it all by myself. It's just too much work, but at the same time, it's just great to be able to, yeah, to meet people who have other talents, and make a nice team with them, and we'll see where it takes us. But
Yeah, I know. And like to think about how you've created this like little empire out of your ADHD diagnosis. Do you ever like sit back and reflect on how that diagnosis has led to this?
well, I don't have time for that. you know, I have a kid. I have a
All
1 year
right, you're
old.
like, I don't have time for reflection.
I barely sleep, so reflection. No, but yeah, sometimes I do, but I don't know. That's not the most interesting part. I think what's really interesting for me, it's really to see, like yesterday I announced on Instagram my book launch, and I made a post about it, reflecting a bit on the my story, and what was very interesting to me was to read the comments of people telling me, what's my drawings and everything had, yeah, what impact it had on them, and how they were able to get diagnosed after that, and just seeing so many lives impacted. That's really what's important to me to see. Yeah, I just wish I could have, got my diagnosis earlier sometimes, and so sometimes I just think maybe I help someone save a few years, and have their own diagnosis a bit earlier than if they didn't cross paths with my content, and it's it's quite a nice feeling
Mm-hmm.
to feel useful. I think sometimes with ADHD, as we struggle so much, to bring project to life and keep them living, and I tried to do so many things in my life. I felt so useless so many times because I felt like I couldn't really bring myself to stay consistent enough to bring value to the world and to other people, and I felt useless for a big part of my life, and now I finally feel useful, and it's just, yeah, it's the best feeling, really.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And sometimes I feel like there is that sense of like, well, you can't, or I guess maybe it's like it's easy for you to say because you've got it all together and you've got this website and everything, and people don't really think about the trajectory of starting out with this one simple post, 3 years ago, just being like, oh, I don't know, I'm just going to put this out there. It makes me feel better. And to see it kind of explode into this, what advice would you give somebody who feels like they are so far from feeling useful?
It's hard because
Or you're like, just read my book.
no, not really, because I feel like I am so lucky, a lot of it just come down to luck, I think. And I just posted the right post at the right time. And, you know, the Instagram algorithm was really kind to me for a few years. And so I feel really lucky. And I don't think I'm just doing something extra that people who are still feeling useless don't do. And I just I just feel their pain because I know what it is, and I'm sorry that I cannot, solve this issue for them. I haven't really figured out the way. I don't think there is one way. I think you need first to make peace with yourself, to try to fight the shame that that you experience. And yeah, just try to be kind to yourself, and yeah, work smarter, not harder. It's really simple things that I try to teach in my book, to not really teach but just share. And because I don't feel like I'm really at the point of teaching, I'm still struggling with most of these things. And so yeah, I just maybe just come, join us, and just don't be alone. That's maybe the only things, maybe if you just are able to share your difficulties and your struggles, just yeah, don't stay alone in your difficulties, and just yeah. But it's easier to say than to do, I think, especially when you are really struggling and you're feeling really bad. So but you're not alone. So that, yeah.
Yeah, and I try to like what really bothers me is is whenever ADHD influencers, and they are out there, but when they kind of perpetuate this idea that there is some secret way of that we've all discovered that is making us successful or something, right? Like there's this secret out there that is going to make you this superpower, and have this superpower, and it bothers me to no end that sort of feels like, oh, buy this and at the end you'll find the secret that the rest of us have. It feeds into this idea that they are somehow, that there's something that they're missing out on, right? And I feel like it's so exploitative, and it really bothers me because I wish I was being more articulate right now, but like, I'm
Yeah,
like, I
but
just, you know what I mean? Like, I just
yeah.
feel like there is no answer really. Like you said, it comes down to, how do I find my people? How do I
Mm,
find the people who are going to validate me and acknowledge what that I am a worthwhile human? And how do I start to question the people who are telling me the opposite, right?
yeah.
Who are telling me that I'm not, or, who are leading me to believe that I am somehow a failure. But again,
Yeah.
you're like, well, that's easier said than done.
Yeah.
But even still,
Yeah.
yeah, right. But I think at the same time, like, I think authenticity around the struggle and the fact that, like, behind every successful Instagram account is a human being who isn't sleeping, or is still struggling with a lot of this stuff. And how can we
Yeah.
be both of those things? How can we hold on to both of those things, and
Yeah.
the reality of life?
Yeah. 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 I completely agree with you. And even the diagnosis is not this magic moment, this magic thing that, I mean, it's really important. But at the same time, and I really, really, yeah, I say that in my book too, is, it's just such a big wave of different emotion, and a lot of them are really negative. I mean, you'll feel probably super angry and just resentful to people who, didn't show the sign, to your parent, to your teachers. When you look back to your school reports, and you see, like, clearly they are describing an ADHD kid, and you're like, okay, so this was 25 years ago. Thank you. Thank you for that. And yeah, it's just so annoying. So yeah, and so even the diagnosis is not this magical thing. You will need to go through it to digest this huge information you get about yourself. And yeah, it's not easy. And I think nothing is really easy when you have ADHD. easy way to do things, especially because, yeah, we are facing so much struggles. I think the main thing that I like to share is, yeah, try to find the easy way and try to avoid just working against yourself, and just find your easy way to do things, and yeah, choose the smart path, not the hard path. It's okay. You're already doing so much, so yeah. So I think, yeah, but the thing is, mm, nuance and complexity is not the biggest selling point. So yeah, but in the end, I think I give tips in the book, but I think they are not the main thing of the book. Really, the main thing is just to learn to understand just how you work, and how you behave, and that's your what you think your weird behavior are just, normal behavior for people with ADHD. It's okay. It's just you have a different reference. You know it will be okay.
Yeah, everything you said, I agree completely. Yeah, it is. Well, that's so wonderful. Now, so one of the things I love about the website too is how it does feel like this one-stop shop for somebody, right? And I love there's the self-test. There's so much free information on that website. It's amazing. It's an amazing resource. And so then you have the workbook, you have the book, you have the YouTube. Like, I feel like there's every way in which somebody might come to information. It's like you've got it covered. It's incredible.
We try.
It's um, so yeah. I mean, obviously, it's like your ADHD. You couldn't have done this without ADHD, right? And I think that's what is always amazing when I see how this happened, right? Where it's like you're in how like when you see all of the work that's put into a website like this, like it's got ADHD written all over it. In terms of how that influences I don't remember what I'm talking about now. I'm just rambling.
Okay.
Anyway, it's an amazing website. It's an amazing
Thank you.
resource. So thank you for you and everybody who might be on your team. But then
Yeah.
sometimes I always kind of find it funny when people talk about my team, and I'm like, there's not really a team. It's just me. Uh,
I do
so,
have a team.
oh,
I
good, good.
couldn't do it. No, no, really. And they are amazing. And thank you, my team. No.
Do you know what you are going to be working on next? Do you have any plans for
Yeah,
the
I
next
have
project?
something, but I cannot talk about it
Okay.
yet. But it's a collaboration with another ADHD influencer. If we if we have to call us like that, creator anyway. So yeah, it's really exciting, and we'll talk about that later
When
this
you're
year.
allowed.
Mm,
Oh, that's
yeah.
very exciting.
Yes. Yes.
Well, fantastic. Okay, so, but other than that, I think, I'll make sure that everybody, if they don't, I'm pretty sure everybody who listens to this podcast probably already follows the Instagram account, but I'll put it there in the show notes, and the website. Congratulations on the book and
Thank
everything,
you.
um, and the baby, and
Yeah. Thank you.
that's so wonderful. And so it's also going to be released in other languages too, right? The book?
Yeah, yeah, we have already almost 10 languages, yeah, confirmed. So, yeah, I'm not able to really talk about it because, it's a publishing world is really a lot of hush thing. Yeah. And also, it will take ages to be published in other languages. So I'm not really allowed to talk about it yet, but it's super exciting. We will have things, let's say, in big languages for the American continent, and also in Asia. So yeah, it's incredible. It's a dream to see your book translated to so many languages, and I really hope it will help bring awareness to some. In some countries it's still completely unknown. So it's just great. I'm just really happy.
Right, and to put a name and a language to some of these behaviors, I think it's why, um, yeah, is so amazing for people who might be struggling alone.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you so much for meeting with me and chatting with me and telling me a little bit more about your story. I'm so excited to see the person behind this,
Thank you.
the my pink-haired coach.
Yeah.
So
I don't
thank you,
really have
Alice.
pink hairs. Yeah. Yeah. Thank
Um,
you so much. It was so nice chatting with you.